In an age of fear, instability, and paranoia, in a society filled with crime, violence, and hate, there's always hope, light, and the opportunity for good. Heroes.
Hello and welcome to Superhero Chat, a production of Bronco Television, brought to you by the Department of Communication at Fayetteville State University. I'm your host, Professor Jonathan Chestnut from the Department of Performing and Fine Arts. We have 4 panelists for today's show. Ian Murphy, a returning panelist and newly graduated alum from the Department of Criminal Justice. Congratulations, Ian.
Thank you.
Dr. Cary Adkinson, a returning panelist and a professor from the Department of Criminal Justice.
Thanks, John.
I got it right?
You sure did.
Josh Pillow, a returning panelist and a graduate student from the Department of Criminal Justice. Starting to see a trend here. And Nick Capiot, a first-time panelist, longtime friend of mine, and creator of his own independent comic book that does not have anything to do with Iron Man. We have a great show for you today. Our new background may give you a hint about today's theme. And as you know, the new Iron Man movie is just released, and it's already breaking records. I believe all the panelists have seen the movie, right?
That's correct.
All right. During Free Talk, let's discuss the new movie, the concept, the story of Iron Man, and the man himself, Tony Stark. Panelists? Did it suck?
No, it's
It was a good movie. I'll say that it's far more of a Tony Stark movie than it is an actual Iron Man movie, much like the last Batman movie was. So if you are going to see it because you want to see a guy in armor beat up people, you will get that, except it will be Iron Patriot and it will be a bunch of other people, but it's still a good movie.
Yeah, they spend a big part of the movie, like spoiler alert, I guess, but they spend basically the middle part of the movie exploring Tony Stark's emotional distress after the events of Avengers.
That was interesting. I really hadn't anticipated that when they were going in that direction. To me, the movie, I loved the whole storyline, and I liked the reinvention of AIM and Firebrand and the Extremist as a whole. But the only thing that really threw me was the whole remote control-y kind of thing. Yeah. Every Iron Man movie seems to have one technology that seems to be the really cool thing for that movie. And I think in this one, it was like all the little pieces flying around and everything else.
Well, it looks good for 3D.
It was pretty cool.
I didn't think about it. I didn't see it in 3D. I saw it in 2D. But that probably would have made some difference.
Yeah.
I like what they did with the Mandarin. And him like this, I guess, Osama bin Laden terrorist-like figure. And then, in the end, you just find out that he's a actor, a bad British play actor. and he's just living the rock star life. And then you find out that, spoiler alert.
This whole show was spoiler alert.
Yeah, he said it. I was just thinking, I guess we're supposed to just be like, spoiler alert.
I like that you brought that up, because that seems to be like a big point of contention for people, whether they like this film or not, is how they... a lot of people really like that aspect of what they did to the Mandarin. I did. But a lot of people were upset he wasn't like some green wizard with magic rings.
Yeah, they didn't use the rings.
You know what? I think they did that because there's a level of cheese factor with that in a way.
Like, I mean, the director did say that it's going to be in it, but it's not going to be your traditional Mandarin too. So
a dude in a dress with 10 rings.
Yeah. I mean,
well, they didn't want to do the magic with the technology.
That's
too hard to do.
Because then you'd have to introduce like the space dragon and
Fin Fang Foom. Yeah. Well, Stanley loves onomatopoeia.
The rings, though, they were supposed to be technology, but they were alien technology, and they didn't. That would have took a lot of explaining, and it would have taken up the majority of the show. We would have had the same complaints that we had with Batman, that it was the Joker movie, and Batman just kind of showed up at the end. It would have taken a lot to explain the Mandarin,
and then
as he appears in the comics.
I mean, from one point in the movie, it's like I guess for Iron Man, it's kind of a reevaluation of himself in a way, and then for, I guess, we looking at Aldridge or Killian Aldridge, Aldridge Killian, I forget which way how to put that together. It's kind of a revenge story in a way. It's like, oh, you embarrassed me that night, and I've been living my life to get revenge in a way. So
my only real complaint I had for the movie came from they do go into a lot of, you know, what he went through after Avengers, and he's kind of having panic attacks and all that. But I didn't really feel there was any growth in the character in it. He kind of was the same way he was at the beginning of the film, less stressed out. He was aware of what, you know, he kind of came to terms with his mortality in that sense. But there really hasn't been an evolution of the character of Tony Stark. He's still always been the rich, arrogant playboy throughout all of them. And that's, you know, when you look at the original comic for it, you know, he was hit by the landmine. And they kind of were going with the idea of he was the rich millionaire playboy, but he has to wear this giant chest piece. And that was a means of humanizing him and making the reader at the time, which was this very anti-establishment kind of person, relate and like this character, which in the first film they kind of tried to do that, but with technology being the way it is, they made it smaller, and it felt more like they were trying to do a spiritual growth in him and him trying to redeem himself, and that seems to have disappeared after the first movie.
Well, see, my take from that was that in all of Tony's searching, his answers always lied in Iron Man, and that it wasn't. I mean, because even he said at the end, he says, "Why can't I fix myself?" And that was kind of this whole. It was a physical manifestation of his metaphysical growth, because while he was still a very adolescent, childlike quality, because that's what we love about him, is that he is the super genius kid, but his relationship with Pepper has changed, and he's become committed and directed kind of thing. And I think what we see is we are seeing a growth, but it's not about the suit of armor, because the suit of armor, that was kind of the whole point of this one. Mark 42 was the first armor they show us in this one. He's got a cave underneath full of 41 other armors. So the armors are just he was like an artist trying to discover the answer by repainting the same painting over and over, and with slight modifications. When he didn't realize that the answer was right there, he needed to fix this.
And you can make the argument that at the end of the movie, when he set the self-destruct mechanism for all the, you know, the big fireworks display, that is growth. That's him showing that, you know, I don't need these armors. I have everything I need to heal myself within myself.
I mean, I get what you're saying for that, and if this was an end entirely, but I mean, we all know there's going to be another Avengers. We know there's going to need to be Tony Stark in that movie. If this was an actual end of the Iron Man thing, I would go for that. My issue is that you're going to need him in the Avengers. He is a drawing character that people go to see the movie for, so for him to destroy all of them, he's going to need to make another one.
I mean,
he'll make a new set.
It was one of
the
So
it was almost like he was overcompensating by
I mean, if he had blown up all of them except maybe one, and you had seen that there's still kind of one sitting there, and it's his, you know, the first one from the first movie, or the second one where it's the traditional, you know, mostly red with a little bit of gold, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. Or maybe you saw him working on a new one at the very end of it, but just seeing him blow them up, and I understood what they were trying to get at with that. But if this character is meant to still grow with the series and all that, doing that kind of...
Well, I agree. I think in a way that when they show him drive away at the end, and he's got all the old robots and everything, so he's still got his childhood, but he has his future too. Okay, it's now time to answer some questions submitted by our fans. The first one comes from Teresa, one of our local fans. Where are all the black superheroes?
Well, thank you for just a nice little send off to me. Thank you. I guess the better question I would have to ask is, where are all the black writers and black artists at? Because maybe with more black writers and more black artists, we may have more black superheroes. And, you know, maybe we can get away from the traditional, he's from the urban city and something magically happens.
He's in Harlem and he's a social worker.
Or like he gets set up and put into the system, Luke Cage basically. It's like, do we have to have criminal black people to get superpowers for some reason? Or like, why can't it just be like a science accident and he gets powers? It has to be something where urban is like it's the inner city, a black kid who was going down the wrong path. He luckily gets powers that shows him, hey, I can do something else other than be a nuisance to my community. So I mean,
well, and there's a third one that you left off. There's the social worker, there's the prison, and then there's the hand-me-down hero, which is like Iron Patriot, Batwing.
Would you say Green Lantern?
Green Lantern sort of, but that was more of they were writing social issues when they created Jon Stewart. So I don't really think that was intentional, but I think they were talking about the hand-me-down hero at that point. But there's that idea that they can't be a hero unless somebody hands them the costume, and that's when Giant Man, he got the Hank Pym growth serum, so. It was all hand-me-down kind of stuff.
I also want to try for other characters like Night Thrasher, which is kind of like a young Tony Stark. I mean,
well, in the 80s and 90s, we saw an increased population of African American writers and comics and things like that, and so we did start seeing some start to appear. But the ones before that, if they were black, they had to be from Africa, like Black Panther, and they had to be from the Secret Isle and know all these things. And then they were written by white guys who had no real idea of what being black is about in America. And so it was always this over stereotyped kind of thing.
Or there was always tied to some social, implied or explicit social commentary, as opposed to just having a character for their own sake.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's doing good because he's doing good. Yeah. And it just so happens he happens to be black.
I mean, everything you said, Josh, I agree with every bit of it. And I think what a lot of it boils down to is, there are black superheroes out there. I mean, Marvel has them, DC has them, Valiant has them. The thing is whether they're on their own book or they're a supporting character. And I agree with everything you said about getting writers and artists, but if you want this, especially if you want maybe a movie featuring these characters, it's a lot to say that, where are they at? Well, you kind of need to go out there. You need to support these books. You need to buy these books, because you can get the best writers and authors out there, but if nobody's going to read them, then they're never going to get anywhere. I would personally love, a Heroes for Hire movie with Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
That would be great. Okay, our second question comes from Todd, one of our producers. Still doesn't have enough to do. Under what conditions is it okay for a superhero to kill a person on my land?
If they have enough weaponry where the police are just like, hey man, basically a Punisher kind of type, where it's like, I have better weaponry than you do, so how are you going to stop me? One of those, and he's crazy, so.
Pretty much situations, I would say. It has to be a very drastic situation, such as Tony with Pepper. When he saw Pepper die, or supposedly die, he went on the next urge of just go ahead, I'm going to kill this guy.
I'm personally kind of against, killing off villains in general. It makes sense for characters like the Punisher, the Spider, and a bunch like that. But for me, just as a writing standpoint, I don't like it because it eliminates something that you can use for future storylines. Unless you bring them back from the dead and all that again. But eventually, that's going to start upsetting people if you kill them off and then bring them back, kill them off, then bring them back.
But the Red Hood made a good statement to Batman. He's like, how many people does the Joker have to kill before you end him? He says, you can't fix him.
Well, for some reason, they always have to do this whole thing where the hero is this, has this level of morality that no one else has. And for some reason, when everyone else is like, yeah, you need to put a bullet in this dude's head, we've given him enough chances to reform, and he hasn't.
It's the same. It's the same argument we see with the death penalty, though. It's what gives you the right to take someone else's life for them taking a life? Is that hypocrisy? So we do see characters that, like the Spider-Mans and the Batmans, and Superman to some extent, although he did, in John Byrne's run, kill some Kryptonian, his Kryptonian brothers. But we see that with our arguments about capital punishment. That if you're condemning somebody for taking a life, what right do we have to take their life in return?
It's one of those social arguments that there's always going to be two huge sides on. But as far as comic books go, it really boils down to the theme of the comic. If it's Spider-Man, we don't want Spider-Man to kill someone because
when he does kill somebody, that is kind of a shocking moment. That's when you get somebody and the Punisher kills somebody. Okay, it's something he does. When Batman or Spider-Man or Superman ever actually do that, then that's something shocking. That's something that's going to sell a book there.
And so it really boils down, do we want our mythical heroes to have the rage that we feel? Even in a fictitious world, I don't want to see Spider-Man kill someone. Whereas the Punisher,
Well, I think it also depends on the villains. Like, how realistic are the villains to our world in a way? Because Punisher deals with mafioso types. and murderers, rapists, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's more closer to home. So you might have people really more willing to have them killed than you would Spider-Man trying to kill off Doc Ock or anyone else, because Doc Ock is never really going to be a threat in this world.
That's true. All right, so our third question comes from Ashley, another Facebook fan. What are your thoughts on so-called real-life superheroes like Batman who have recently turned in a suspect to the police stations? They're arresting people and stuff like that. People in real costumes.
Just don't do it. Don't. I understand you're a fan, but I got this great documentary you need to watch. It's called Kick-Ass.
But he asked that question.
Yeah,
we have the technology. Why hasn't somebody done it? Why hasn't somebody built the Iron Man armor? Or
that's a great film if you're looking at it for things, or the comic if you're looking at it through things like the bystander effect, where why do people look and see crime? I mean, it could be they're afraid of retaliation. They don't think they can do enough. They may help out later on, but I mean, there is a great scene in the movie and in the comic where, people are going, "What's wrong with you?" And they're recording him. He's going, "What do you mean, what's wrong with me? I'm doing something. You're all just sitting here recording stuff." I mean, I think what they're trying to do, the real life superheroes are trying to do, I think that's commendable, but I think there's a lot better ways that you can go about doing it. And I mean, there's a reason why being a vigilante isn't something that's really approved of.
Yeah.
So
pretty much that's what they are. They are vigilantes, and that's what's going on in Chicago, New York, with all these different groups.
I mean,
jumping up, and
if you really want to do something for it, go ahead and I guess try and be a cop. Try and do it something legitimately, because the moment you screw up, that's just going to kind of make comic fans look bad in general.
Yeah. Well, if you look at what most of the real world heroes are doing, is they're involved in more kind of social beneficial type things like soup kitchens and helping helping type things, but not necessarily putting themselves at risk. It's relatively rare to see examples of them actually fighting crime.
Very few.
I mean, a lot of cases where you do get those ones, like a lot of people keep dressing up as Batman recently, and a lot of times they end up getting arrested. And I mean, because the one I heard about is he was trying to offer assistance to the police finding a fugitive, and he kept throwing off the scent for their dog. So,
well, Ultimate Spider-Man, they had a little sub-story that ran through this comic where Spider-Man kept having to capture the Shocker. He showed up in like issue 3, Spider-Man knocked him out, tied him to a pole. Showed up in issue 6, knocked him out, tied him to a pole, and he finally said something to the cops. He was like, "Why is this guy?" He says, "Because nobody's pressing charges."
Yeah.
He says, "You're the only one that sees him commit the crime. There's no evidence."
I mean, they tried to do that in the films too. I mean, in Superman Returns, that's what led to Luthor not getting prosecuted. I've seen it done in a couple other things for it where, that's kind of the big ongoing joke with a lot of supervillains and all that. It's if Batman brings them into justice, then, can you really prosecute them? Because it wasn't law enforcement, nothing involved with the sexual
Adam West was deputized
by
the commissioner in the 1960s. So there you go. He was a cop.
They actually made arrests and people went to jail in that series too. So
they also put eyebrows on the costume.
Yeah, they did.
I think we're trying to erase all that.
Hey, I love the Batwatusi.
I love the Batwatusi. That man made me happy. All right, so these are all great questions and great answers from my panelists. Well, that's all the time we have for today. A big thank you to the panelists, Ian Murphy, Dr. Cary Adkinson, Josh Pillow, and Nick Capiot. I'm your host for Superhero Chat, Jonathan Chestnut. Remember, you don't have to be super to be a hero. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook at Bronco Television. Until next time, take care.